Hello, welcome everyone. I'm going to get us set up and so we can start class. I hope everyone is having a nice day. I know you can't see me yet. It's because we're still trying out our new setup. Aha! It works. We've got some new lights. So if it's shining in your face, I apologize. But you should be able to see class better today because of these lights. Previously, I tended to lose light as the class went on, and that was no good. Let's see who's joining us. Holly, Angela, Cindy, Mira, Robin, Veronica, Wanda! We are also joined by my new foster pup, who is right behind the camera, who is taking a lovely nap right now. She is old and a couch potato and full of love. I just posted a photo of her to the wall if you want to see what she looks like. But let's jump into class today because it's time to beat. It's time to start our weekend off right. Oh, everyone's here. Aw. So this is the class that was going to happen last Friday, but then just like all my plans, LA shifted, and it just made sense to postpone class. So we're doing today. And as you saw in the intro photo, we're going to be working on two pretty simple designs today. I think we'll start with our owlies. And we're actually going to make 2 spirals per owl. So you'll see obviously our feature spiral at the bottom, kind of acting as our head pin. But then this is a coin bead. And generally a coin bead wants to really shift around. But on the back, I've just added a little bonus spiral there, a little hat for our owl to keep it in place better. So as you're wearing it, you'll always kind of know how it's looking. You don't have to worry about your owl turning sideways or all the way around like an owl likes to do. And we're going to use the same technique in our second pair of earrings, which is using some of our butterfly coins in the shop. Let's see. Let me raise up the light a little bit. Here we go. Alrighty, hopefully that still works okay. So this one's using some of these really cool etched butterfly coins in the shop that I highly recommend trying. They're such a unique bead. It's actually a green glass and then covered in all sorts of beautiful vitriol and etched, and they're just like super grungy and awesome. And I was like, I want to pair those with something cool. So I am actually wrapping those in some little tourmalines. So the fun use of itty bitties. These are around, let's see if I have my bag. I think they're just over 2 millimeter, if I remember right. And the strand has a mix on it, so it lent really well to this design. It has the green and amber tones that I'm using here. So at the bottom there, I'm using a fancy facet round. I'm actually going to change up how I wrapped this because I did a knotted head pin and I wrapped it and it was just like a little bit of herringbone style. So we're just going to wrap it like a brio so we can show off the really nice faceting of the bead. So both of these, the whole point of why I'm doing this is we're doing fairly simple earring techniques. You can use any beads you like. You can like scroll the shop. We've got coin beads and all sorts of different animals. You're gonna find cats and I can't think of the word. A dragonfly. We have lots of dragonfly coins. I really like these owl coins. They're a bit thicker and there's kind of a really unique shape that I haven't seen before. So we're going to jump in with those. Today we're going to be using German style wire, which you can find at the shop, but both of these will also work okay with some craft wire as well. I am going to use a 22 gauge wire. This is a little flexible. I wouldn't use a 24 just for structure, but like a 20 or 22 will do just fine. And we're going to start at the bottom with the spiral. So I'm sure you've seen some of the spiral technique before. Everyone does it like a little differently. So here is my method. Let me zoom in just a little. I'm sorry, Wanda. So we're going to give myself a good chunk of wire, maybe about 12 inches. I should have some extra. Just because we are making the spiral, we're going all the way up the earring. We're going to wrap it and make another spiral. Get my wire warmed up just a little bit. Run my hands through it. This also helps to straighten it out. And let's start with our spiral. I like to intentionally do a sideways flush cut when I start my spiral. So I'm coming in, and I'm going to intentionally make the wire have a point. Keeping my finger there so that little piece of shrapnel doesn't go flying into my eye. And you'll see we've got a nice itty bitty weapon. Take your flat nose, and the goal is to fold that point in on itself. So wherever the side it's open to, folds downwards. And this is just a small detail that's not necessary, but it'll help get, oh, that one really bent down tiny. You can almost not see it, but it bent down there, and that'll be the start of the inside of my spiral to hopefully give an illusion that there's like not even a start to the spiral. And then I'm gonna grip it with my flat nose pliers and just go really start small here. I'm keeping pressure right against the wire as I bend down. So bend down just a little bit, adjust your pliers, and then you'll start to get into a rhythm of this, especially as the spiral gets bigger, that you can kind of just keep, you can start picking up your pace a little bit. So I think Neely and Sarah might start their spirals a little differently. All are valid. I think it's sometimes nice to know different ways to start it. Sometimes you can, I've used to like hammer the center, but because this is a silver plate wire, I don't want to risk exposing a bunch of copper and the mixed metals in the German style wire. But to keep that spiral nice and tight, I'm doing little bits at a time. So there should be no gaps if we did it right. Why is it called German wire? So it's based off, it's German style because it's based off of German wire, which is a harder temper wire. If you look at kind of a scale, I don't know if I have a package of it unopened. Let's see. My hunch is I'm not going to find an unopened one. But it's a little bit harder temper, a little bit like feels a bit more work hardened than a copper wire. Like a typical craft wire has a copper core, and that's considered dead soft. That's going to be a really soft wire to work with. And sometimes it's nice, it's a little easier to work with a slightly more tempered wire. And that's why I started using it after Sarah recommended it. Especially when you're working on wire up loops and things, it's just a little bit easier. So it is up to how big you want to make your spiral. But when you are happy with the size, we're going to break the neck of it just by making a bend with our flat nose pliers until it feels about centered. That's a great alternative head pin as well if you want to mix it up a little bit. Now, where did Sam keep extra owls? Maybe none. Well, we can look at this. This is a prototype that was really hard to replicate, so it just did not become class. And this owl will become, oh, let me check the bin. I did. All right, destroying that owl. All right, so I'm going to put my owl so it is perched on my head pin. Oh, Melanie, I'm glad that technique is helpful. Just play around with the center, especially if I typically make these in a solid copper wire. And in that case, you can take a steel bench block and hammer the tiniest center of your spiral so it becomes flat and then continue to wrap around it. And you'll have even less of a gap. See, I have like the tiniest gap there. That's okay. I put a spacer bead before my next bead. In this case, I used an 8/0 seed bead from our July seed bead kit that we actually just restocked. So if you search sand, because it was the sand and sea palette. So search sand, and you should, if we still have it in stock, you'll see this. That was one of the tubes available, but you can use pretty much any smaller bead here. And we just want this to create some space between them, and it'll give us a space to do some wraps as well. The more wraps you do here, the less you'll actually see the spacer bead. And then let's put on one of our fancy facets. So these are not your typical fire polish round. You'll see that the faceting style is different. It's cut much more in the style of a gemstone. So I'll show you on the wire what I'm talking about. It's kind of a fun alternative check round if you're looking for something a little extra special. It comes in one size, but we have it, I think, in like at least 8 colors. So I recommend snagging one of each. I find them really useful to have around when I just want a nice accent bead, because it always feels like it elevates what I'm working on. So we've got all of our beads are ready to go, and we're going to continue to make our wire wrap loop and then work our way back down. Alrighty, for my loop, I had my loop facing me so that when you put on an ear wire, the earring will face forward. So we're going to turn our coil, because this is going to be the plane we're now going to be making the loop on. Give myself a little bit of space before I make my 90-degree bend, and then rotate your pliers up. So I'm as best I can keeping that spiral flat so that my loop will end up mirroring it. All right, so I brought my wire around, and you'll see my loop is facing the direction that we want. Oh, Nana, our foster pup, is hearing someone outside. So if you hear her sudden barking, she doesn't bark a lot, but sometimes she sees a shadow and won't stop barking for a full minute. So maybe we'll get to experience that today. I'm going to go ahead and fill in my wire wrap loops, really kind of using that same pressure in my pointer finger, and then pulling back with my thumb so that my wraps are nice and secure. I think it makes such a difference in the final product when those small details look like they look like you know what you're doing, and you do know what you're doing. So I think just take the time to make sure you like the look of it. I always, if I don't like it, can gently give your coils a squeeze. Careful where you're squeezing. Oh, Nana. Nana. It's okay, babe. Yeah, I won't actually be able to stop this because she's not treat motivated. And hey, babe, baby. All right, I think we're good. So I love the look of the decorated bead. So we're going to wrap this wire across, coming from our right side to our left. You can do it the other way as well. Nana's the great protector. She'll start barking, and then she'll go around the entire place, making sure we are not threatened. So I really thank you, Nana. Oh, she's back to sleep. So I brought my wire around and see how many I wanted to do here. All right, I did one full revolution. So now holding it by the top, kind of my most secure point, bringing that all the way around. So there's now full revolution around the seed bead, and we can flip over our piece. It will look pretty darn similar, but we're designating this the back side because we're going to add our coil here to keep our owl from turning its head all the way around. We're making a much smaller coil here, so I'm going to give myself about 1 inch. And I can also start again with my pointed one, but I'm not nearly as concerned about the back coiling. I care, but I'm not as stressed about making it perfect. So I'm going to take that one and fold it over to start. How it folded over is proving to be different than when I was first making these, because I folded so little over, the wire is just compressing in my pliers as if I just hammered it. So that's kind of fine, but it's going to make it a little bit more inconsistent. let's start wrapping and see how it looks. So same technique, you just have a little less room to work in here. And your goal is to get all the way to the center. That will totally work. The owl is an eyepiece. So you can kind of just press that in a little bit to get that really nice and secured. And you have your earring. So it's like such a simple design. Like, take elements from this if you like and make your own pair. You can use the spiral in a way where it's featured at the bottom. So I'll often do that. Let me find a bead that will work. I'm looking for like a rectangle bead. So something like this will work. And we'll actually this time do a quick demo of featuring that large spiral. And it'll mean you only end up needing to make one spiral because our feature spiral is going to hold our bead in place and provide a little extra personality to our final earring design. All right, I'm going to try folding over just a little bit more than I had been. See if that gets me back to where I was. Yeah, that's a little better. Because now when I bring that in, it actually will be a little tighter, theoretically. Squishing this in is always going to be the hardest part. But if you can get some leverage on it. Come on. There we go. That's more what I was looking for. And if I was in copperware, I could hammer that just a little bit. So it kind of blends in and it becomes its own little tiny blob at the center of our spiral. The only disadvantage of what I just did is that the original shape of the spiral is a little oval. So you'll see that my new spiral is a little oval. As we get bigger, it should correct itself a little bit. I have a boo-boo. I'm gonna come back a little bit and redo it. Yep, there we go. All right, the boo-boo's okay. So there is a head pin design where folks will intentionally put a point here at the bottom of their head pin. I have never done that before. I'm gonna go ahead and break the neck. And I didn't even test if my bead is gonna like this size wire. It's also gotten a little jaggedy. Generally, a check bead will fit 24 and 22 gauge the best. Once you start getting in 20 gauge territory, it might not fit. So, because this bead is not paper, I need to give myself a little extra wire so that I can wrap around the side of the bead before it then pulls up. So I'm really kind of pressing firmly against the bead slowly. So it becomes this little cradle. And from there you can finish off your earrings. So that is kind of technique number one today. Kind of alter two earring types coming from the same basic spiral technique. I used to be kind of obsessed with the spirals. I think my earring box might be somewhere near me. Literally every earring I used to do had some sort of spiral, or at least all the beads were wrapped. I just thought it was the coolest look, and I'm still kind of into it. So I'll finish this one up just with a wire wrap loop, and we'll move on to our next technique, which you might recognize. Because it's a technique that I learned from Sarah Lovecraft. And if you do not know who Sarah Lovecraft is, you have such a joy in front of you, something to discover. See, in this case, I didn't keep in mind my loop. I kind of noticed as I was going, didn't care too much. I can hold my bead and spiral and rotate it 90 degrees, and it'll be mostly fine. It won't be perfect, but it can accommodate at least that a little bit. And I can also come in and clean things up a bit. So there is technique number 1. Shall we move on to number 2? Let me catch up on the comments for a second. Melanie said, can you do a square spiral for the square beads? If yes, could you show us how? Not that I've done. I've seen someone do a triangle spiral where they kind of manually made a triangle. I've never tried it myself, but I've never seen a square spiral. That might take a little bit more time, but theoretically it's possible. I'm all about trying things out with wire. The amount of scrap wire that I go through, that I create, is absurd when I'm really getting going, trying to figure things out. Like when I was coming up with some of these for class, there's like 5 pairs of earrings that are probably in some form. I wanted to make like a different type of head pin that was just like a coil, but that also proved to be quite difficult, possible but difficult. I was experimenting with some little wire doodads here. I just think the more you mess around with your wire, the more you start to understand how it reacts and how it behaves. Sarah Lucker, who's that? Wanda, let me tell you about her. I think you'd be great friends, actually. Y'all got to check out Sarah's channel. She thinks she released new kits today. I know they sold out mostly, but definitely check out her 13 Crows Etsy shop. Let's go support her. She is awesome. This technique I learned from her. It is so genius. And when I first saw it, I didn't try it at first because I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it was that easy to create this wraparound. I was like, oh, that's gonna fall right off. It's secure. I couldn't actually tell you exactly how, but through using the herringbone, these beads aren't really going anywhere. Yeah, they could slide off a little bit, but they'll just right back on, and it's not flopping around. I thought it was such a fun way to accent a round bead like this. If you want to see Sarah's original class and like her video, I believe it was like this like funky pendant she did. It was like this hippie, I think she called it hippie pendant on her channel. And you can see her teach the original technique. This earring is based on that pendant she did. So let's pick out an owl that might go nicely. With vitriol, you get some variation. By the way, every bead I'm using, except for the one I grabbed from my stash, is available on the shop. And I put direct links in this video so you can find the butterflies, owls, fancy facets, seed beads, German style wire. You'll find all that on the website. And then definitely snag a strand of this tourmaline because I put it on sale and it's time to use it. So this technique from Miss Sarah features 24 gauge wire. I'm going to be using a 24 gauge German style wire, which is comes in this beautiful copper tone. I made this last one like over a week ago, so my next one might not come out identical, but I'll walk you through it so that yours definitely will be able to assist me in that. You can kind of mark some lines. I didn't let them dry on your pliers to give you some consistent bend over points. But we are going to start at the top, put on our bead, and then go down to the bottom, and end with adding the wire wraps. First comes all the wire wrap loops in this technique, and then we'll sit here stringing itty bitties as best we can on camera. All right, so I'm going to give myself a good bit of wire. Remind me to tell you how much I ended up actually using, so when you do it. But I'm going to give myself 18 inches, which should be more than enough, and start by straightening out my wire. This is really important, this technique, especially when we get to that stage with the itty bitties, that you need your wire pretty in line. Alrighty. So we are going to start. Gotta make sure I don't start at the wrong point. Well, either way, we'll do this together. This is why usually I prep my classes right before so I can tell you exactly what I did. But we'll be fine. Wire is pretty forgiving. I'm giving myself some extra wire so that I can do my wire wrap loop in a longer way than I typically would. Let's do our loop about this large. Totally up to you, but I'm noting it now so we can try to do it again consistently for the 4 loops. And then we're going to do a good number. We're going to do more than like the standard 2 or 3. We're going to fill it up. Then here's the train. Okay, she's still sleeping. We're good. Alrighty, so I try to do it nice. Oh, I'm off camera. Apologies. I did some nice tight coiling as best I could. I'll get you measurement, and this will kind of help us stay as consistent as possible. All right, I'm almost at 5 millimeters in length, so we might as well just do the full 5 millimeters of coils. So let me add on 2 more. All right, I'm at just about 5 millimeters of just that coiled section. Focus, focus, there in the middle. I'm gonna tighten up my coils just a little bit. And cut off my wire. I'm just tucking in my end. I'm going to move my camera so you can see what I'm doing properly. We used to have like a secret word that you would yell at me if I got off camera because I was completely unable to stay on camera. Let's get our butterfly on there. Should go on nice and easily because we're using a 24 gauge wire. But because our coils are large enough there, kind of pick what our front side's going to be. Yeah. I think we've got this option for a match, or this one. Maybe this one's a little bit more subtle. With these edge beads, they're not going to match exactly perfectly, but I think if you put some effort in, it shows, and it's handmade jewelry at the end of the day. Now we're going to continue on the other side. So we're kind of building our frame base first. We're going to continue on the other side and also make our wrap loop, and then begin our what is essentially a herringbone technique. So we need, this is tricky. We need to give our sides, if we want to make it even, you want to fold about 5 millimeters over. What way about my loop? Let's do it this way. I will keep it opposite to this current loop. So that should be about 5 millimeters. This is also where, if you just want them to match and not match top and bottom, but the earrings to match, you can reference those lines. So if I'm going to use my 3rd dot I have marked on my pliers as what I'll use for both. All right, 90-degree bend. And we're going to start the same process again. I did my loop about that large. Banana split. All right, our secret word is banana split when Sam gets off camera. Sarah never goes off camera. I don't know how. It's like a superpower. I only can be off camera. But if I adjust the camera, that it actually gives me a better shot, then that's good. All right, this one's wrapping up nice and quick. Come right up against your bead, so it's pretty snug. And do not cut off that wire. That is what we're going to use to start our wrapping. So we're going to go one side at a time. We're going to start with the side we've got going here. So I'm coming from the back and I come up and over the front. I say that more so to do it consistently and not saying that that's exactly what a herringbone pattern is, though it could be. All right, this turn is already ready for us, and you can see it's a nice, beautiful mix of yellow and green tone tourmaline. So I'm going to intentionally take off a bunch of it so that I have a mix on my wire. And here's where you all need to give me some patience, because when I was doing this, not on camera, it took me a million years to find those holes. I'm also already seeing that my wire's pretty decently okay straight where the beads are ending up, so I should be okay. Come on, itty bitties. This is where if you have like some bifocals or those zoom, the ones that zoom in for you, magnify, are very helpful, itty bitties. I just kind of do it one at a time, you know, for the best. Today, you gotta give me some good luck here. These are going on. I hope I didn't just jinx myself. I did the other ones at nighttime though, so maybe I have some better light. Nope, he says that he can't find a hole. Let's do a few more and then check in how we're doing. Who has tried this technique from Sarah before? Because I have seen folks post it in the gem chat group using some beads from the shop, and it's always really cool to see. And I finally tried it recently. I was like, this is awesome and really secure. Alrighty, beads. Why aren't you going? If there's, even with the itty bitties, if there's the tiniest kink in that wire, they are not going to want to go anywhere. Let's see if I can address it. There we go. So this is the bottom. We're starting from the bottom and we're working our way around. And this is just to check in how many more beads we need. Our goal is to just kind of fill it up. Nana, Nana. This is like a Sarah stream. Hold on, folks. Hey, you're okay. You're okay. She probably saw a shadow. She's very quiet until she's no longer quiet. Okay, so what I noticed when I did that is I needed at least one more bead. This dog has got to be like 10 years old. Yeah, actually, I might, if she barks again, I'll give her one of the, I've got some dental chews, I think. I think that's about all I have left. Alrighty, I'm coming around. Looks like it's going to fit pretty well. And I'm coming over the front. Kind of seeing how it's laying. And I do that looping. I'm putting pressure with my thumb against the coin bead. So this hopefully stays secure as I come around. It's pretty good. Right now, there's nothing keeping that coin in place, but we'll get to that. And we're going to start on our next section of beads. I already see some like tiny kinks in the wire that might cause me some issues. So I'm coming with these are nylon jaw pliers. Really nice to have around. All right. Let's get on our next batch of beads. She is singing. I think she likes jewelry making. Nana, what do you think of what do you think of spirals? Yep, she said yes. She kind of does this coughing thing that I don't think is just a cough. I think it's also a way she expresses herself. Like if I have a door closed that she doesn't want to be closed, she'll kind of stand in front of it and do this like coffee breath thing. She's kind of finicky. She's currently living with another foster who's out of town, and the main issue they've had so far is her and food. My last foster ate every food that was around, didn't have to bribe. Nana doesn't really care about food. I even tried like a fancier food, no go. So far, she's pretty much only eaten the chicken treats and grazed a little bit. So I reached back out to her fosters to see if they have any ideas. She's been like usually it's caused by like stress and things like that, but like she's been pretty happy. I've been given her lots of pets, but she is in a new environment. She has like, based on body language, seemed pretty relaxed here, which is good. All right, let me see how many more tourmalines I need. Steam trick. Yeah, my hunch is that she wants really fancy food. I also think she might be a little sick. She was in the shelter for a while, and I don't think arrived doing that well. So my hunch is there's probably more to the story. So I hope her foster will kind of get that looked at. I'm also going to be at the shelter tomorrow, so I might have them look at her. All right, so I'm bringing my beads around to assess if I need to add any more length. It's actually looking like I'm okay here. So I'm coming around the front, just like a herringbone. You want one more bead? So you're not too tight? Okay, one more bead. Yeah, she might have gotten a cough from the shelter. It's definitely possible. All right, so I'm coming across the front. I guess we designated this the front. Sure. Yeah. Well, here we said this was the front, so I'm going to keep continuing with that theme. That this is the front. By that, I mean that we're going to come up and over to the back from right to left. And maybe a little finesse in here to make it not too tight, a little Goldilocks. And I did a full wraparound, and I'm going to do a bonus one. So we should be pretty nice and secure there. So here is how our butterfly is flying. Looking pretty good so far, I think. Let's see how our loops are. So now we're going to use the technique from the last pair to fix our spinning globe effect here. Oh, Wanda. I'm going to definitely read out some of these comments later. There's some good ideas here. Yeah. Yeah, she's a sweet pit, Marianne. So we're going to take our tail here and bring it down towards the back. I know it's the back because I did all my wrappings around the front. So the tourmaline kind of is raised up on one side. And I'm going to give myself about an inch or so, maybe a little bonus. And because this is a 24 gauge wire, that initial cut is not going to matter quite as much. It's already such a small little piece of wire. I'm just going to bend it over and carefully start to make my spiral. So I've got my little bend over. Come on. So in that case, I was able to take the tip and just push it more down and then finish it off there. So it's just a little crimp look there, and then start my wrapping. So I don't have quite as much room to work in again, but just one little bit at a time, bring my spiral in. Sarah had another idea for keeping your beaded line. She ran some wires across the back. So if you watch the original class, you can see how she did that. I really like this spiral technique also as an option, because I like it. It looks like a little intentional accent there also. So we got to actually keep it high enough that it still touches the bead. You don't have to cover much of it. Flip back to the front and see how we're doing. So my sides are pretty secure. I feel pretty good about that. I'm going to just go ahead and get my loops perfectly in line. And we've got our component with our spiral in the back. What do you think? I think it wanted a little bit bonus extra, so I added a fancy facet. Same, this is this amber topaz glass that I absolutely love. It's like, y'all, it's ready for fall. And I'm gonna change up how I did it. I did that on a knotted head pin, but then I wanted the bead to be surrounded a bit. And I'm actually gonna change up what I did and do a brio wrapping on a round bead. So all you have to do for that, there's a couple ways you can do a brio wrap, but you can choose your method. In this today, I'm feeling, okay, we'll do a stand. Often I'll do a 2-wire brio wrap, but I'll do a standard one because I think it will have a nice look. So just give myself a couple inches as I bring the wire over and try to center it. It's a great chance to practice your brio wraps. Very low stakes, I promise. I'm a little off center, but it'll be a little forgiving, but generally in the middle there. And I'm going to take my short end, and this is the hardest part of a standard brio wrap, is just doing a couple loops around. I tend to use the bead as what I hold on to while I wrap, but that doesn't always work. If you're using a nice fine gemstone, that's going to put pressure on the hole, which tends to be a lot more fragile. But in this, when with glass, you can see that I'm not going to be able to break that bead by twisting it. So here I have my brio wrap. Is a nice alternative if you don't have a head pin. You can always do a brio wrap on a round bead. And then I'll come in. I already have a couple loops there, so I'm just going to come in with the tip of my round nose pliers to not add too many more. Going to make a standard loop. Fill in my gap. And then we'll see how much wire we have left. Typically with a brio wrap, you'd keep going, which why the hell not? Let's keep going. And start to add a little decoration to your brio if you have extra wire. It might look kind of cool on this bead to give it a hat. It'll also kind of make it look more like a brio, I think. So I'm just kind of bringing the remaining wire round and round to secure it. There's a couple ways you can do it. Sometimes I'll just cut it and make sure the end's not too exposed. I just did both methods at once, which defeats the purpose. So I'm going to go ahead and end it there. A more standard finish would be to bring the wire back up the front and do a loop around near the top loop, and that'll really secure your wire in place. But this tends to work pretty well as well. Gently tuck that in, and that'll be the back. if anyone noticed the misstep in that, is that we have to actually attach it to your earring before you do your wire wraps. So we might as well just go ahead and do that again and finish up our earrings. We have the last few minutes, and we'll go through the technique one more time. I bet some of you, so you guys always catch that before I do it. I'm actually gonna give myself some extra wire in case I want to do more wire wrapping on that bead. Get my wire straightened out, and we'll do that technique one more time. Fancy fasten. Give myself a couple inches and basically just pinch it towards the center. You can use your pliers here to aid you. It just sometimes it's kind of tricky. But the general idea is to keep pinching them so they meet at the center. It's not bad. And now I'm gonna try to coax it around the main wire. Trim off my extra. And now we have all this wire to work with to finish our loop, and we're gonna connect it to our earring. There's not a time I haven't messed it up, especially if I'm like on class and trying to focus on explaining what I'm doing. There's not a chance I'm actually gonna connect it on the first try. So if you do that, you are not alone. It's called practice, I guess. All right, go ahead and try that again. Make my loop. And open your loop like a jump ring. So instead of, I guess I haven't done it so long to think of what I would instead of opening it outwards, you want to open it up. So there's a little space there. This is the front. And now you just have more obstacles in your way because it is attached. Otherwise, you can use a jump ring, but both of these techniques here are wire wrap loops. So they're pretty secure, and that's kind of nice. So I'm gonna, sometimes if you hold it just right, you can get both loops in your pliers and they'll be okay. Don't squeeze this too hard. It'll start to make them a little bit weaker. You got tool magic, they should be just fine. I might be able to hold it with my nylons, except my nylons are a little large. So I'm gonna end up crushing my coils. All right, so I did, oop, come on, come around. Here we go. The wire's behaving a little differently because it is a slightly more round bead, but it just needs to get up a little bit further. All right, it's designated messy wrap now. This time I'll come up the bead. My leverage with a burrito, it's a lot flatter, it's easier to hold. With this round bead, I'm trying to get fancy with it, and I'm just making my life harder. All right, I'm backtracking. We're gonna go back down to ending it at the base, because that seems to be where it wants to be. Sometimes it's just not worth fighting the wire. See where our back roughly is gonna be. Interesting. Okay, how I did my loops. My bead's not facing quite how I want, but that's okay. We'll fix that in just a second. See, if you had just done a little less extra than I just was, you'd have no problem wrapping up your round bead. I didn't need to add all this extra wire here. I was just like, oh, why not? So right now, the bead is not hanging the direction I want it to be. So one of the loops, basically the bottom loop on the butterfly, needs to turn 90 degrees so that it hangs how I want. So I'm just gonna give it a little turn. See if that's enough. Just a little bit more. And now it should hang a little nicer. This looks a little bent. And let's see how we're hanging. How are we back to exactly where we were? Hold on. That was supposed to be our troubleshoot. Oh, okay. So if I just turn, so it turns out I needed to actually, the loop that I needed to turn was the bottom one, because that the whole thing didn't turn because of all the wraps that have happened here. So I'm gonna try to get this one to be actually the one that turned. Very interesting little subtle difference of turning loops that doesn't typically happen. So I'm gonna try just turning that one. And now it's hanging the way I want it to be. We got there. Folks, we got there. And I am pretty happy with my earring. It's not gonna be identical to this one because I did change up a little bit how I was doing. But we've got some almost matching earrings. And I just need to redo the bottom bead there to get it to match just a little bit more. And that's technique number 2. Yeah, I definitely did turn the top loop, Sylvia, because generally when you turn one loop, that it fixes the problem. But I guess because of everything going on here, everything didn't turn quite. I really needed this one to be the one that turned, you're right, so that this bead could hang the right way. So I ended up just holding the bead and turning the loop, just this loop, and it was able to turn on its own just fine. And we've got another little pair of earrings. Let's see our work for the day. Got our butterfly earrings. So that's our butterfly coin, our fancy facets. And we've got a whole family of owls now. And all of that uses the little spiral technique to hold our beads in place. So you can try this out with pretty much anything. I'm like opening up my stash to see like what bead like would really benefit from this. And it's typically those beads that don't look good from every direction. Insert Wanda joke here. So like here's some like fun table cuts I found in my stash. In this case, you really want that glass to be featured. It's so special. So I'd probably, in this case, I don't want to cover it up. So I probably would do a technique more like the owl, so it could be seen, and put a spiral on the back so it stays facing forward. Gosh, those look like they need to be something right now. But we are out of time, folks. Thank you for joining. I hope you picked up a little bit of inspiration from today. We kept it nice and simple, was the goal. Check out Sarah's original tutorial on her YouTube channel, Sarah Lovecraft Designs YouTube channel, if you want to learn more about this technique. But that's the basic idea of it. I think we just added like a little dangle. I think her original one maybe didn't have a dangle on it. So we just added a little extra there. Maybe hers did. I can't quite remember. But nonetheless, we have come to the end of class. Sylvie said you can use as a small pendant as well. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter the size you do this in. Like if you have a nice coin focal, use some larger beads around the outside of it, and like absolutely have a great focal there. Thank you, Gloria. I'm just catching up on some other dot comments. Everyone, thank you for being here. It was nice to do a class again. I felt a little rusty, but I still felt good doing it, which was nice. I used to feel like really, really nervous doing classes, but I feel more comfortable these days. Just had to kind of remember some of the techniques I was doing because I prepped this class over a week ago. But thank you for hanging with and being here. I hope you make something today, make something this weekend, and share it in the Gem Chat group. It's really lovely to see when folks in the community are making, because that's kind of how I get inspired. We've got an animal clinic in the comments. Hello, everyone. I will see you probably on Tuesday, maybe Monday with the TierCast launch. I will see you next week. I hope everyone has a lovely weekend. You are all the best, and I sending so much love out to all of you. Have a great one.